Your show's rubbish.
Welcome back to the show after a long break.
And
Trout spinners, by the way.
A few people have noticed that as well, Gary. Our absence has not gone undetected. This is from James Lutchford. Dear Dick and Dom.
Has the Queen been in touch?
No. This is not the first time I've mentioned this, but what's the story with your sporadic podcast? I don't see one uploaded for a fortnight, and then you throw two out at once, and then it's quiet again. I don't want to stir shit, but all I'm saying is there are other Antipodean, I can't say that word, podcasts out there with real regularity. So while you two have your thumbs firmly up your arse, like Duncan, I'm ashamed to say I'm very nearly pushed to subscribe on them the other day. All right, see you later. Cheers, James.
They may have regularity, but they do not have the lack of quality that we have.
Absolutely.
So we excel in that and the shoddiness. Yeah, you're totally right. You are stirring shit, but that's shit that needs to be stirred. We are quite irregular. Actually, I've had family problems. We've also, Mar's been visiting his family. It's just been a long time. And then before that, we did about 3 or 4 podcasts, but there was a gap before that. Just life things are getting in the way. We're not professionals. We don't get paid to do this. I know that's crazy. We should get paid to do this, but we don't.
Hello, £78 on Patreon.
On Patreon. Join us on Patreon. But yeah, no. So we love doing it. By the way, it's not a chore. I'm not saying we don't get paid, so why should we bother? I'm just saying it when life things take over. That's kind of why. We don't broadcast with quite the frequency we'd like, but we're going to hopefully start getting back into broadcasting with more regularity from now.
From now. So this is the real show. Right. From now. Okay, so what's happened in the interim? So there was the football. Did you enjoy the football? I don't want to spend too long on it.
Well,
quick yes or no. Yeah, quick yes or no.
No, I don't give yes or no's. I enjoyed the football.
Yeah.
Yes, I enjoyed it very much. One of the things I enjoyed most about the football is the fact you even got into the football. I love it when that happens, when non-football people get sucked in, because it's such as it moves into the zeitgeist. It becomes a cultural thing rather than a sports.
But I'll tell you what, when I was putting graffiti all over Marcus Rashford's face when we lost,
yeah,
it's a busy day. No, I wouldn't do that. That's disgusting, and I didn't approve of any of that.
Good.
So,
yeah,
like anyone who's
that makes it like, yeah, of course.
Like there was the slim possibility.
Racist graffiti. Yeah. Can we get a sponsor on the back of that?
I'll tell you what, though, it was funny because I was watching it. It is incredible the sort of person, because there was me, my brother-in-law, my sister, and her friend. We were all watching the final together. It was a really fun afternoon/evening. We're not really into it, but then their other friend came and he's really into it, and he's sitting there sort of pensive with his hands together, watching it in deathly silence and literally just throwing evils at us every time we made a noise. It's like, mate, come on, what did you expect? We're not gonna, I would be the same if it was like, if I went to watch like Lost in Translation in 35mm and you were sitting there going, who's that? I'd be annoyed.
Yeah. Why are they being so silent at that point? Is that something to do with the plot?
Is that about their relationship? Sort of
I don't understand. Is it sort of
the expression of silence? Emotion. So I also, on my travels back home, you're indeed right, I did go back to Suffolk. And it was a really nice break. I always have a good time when I go there. So the pace of life is much slower than it is in London. But my sister's got, I'm an uncle to a niece and 2 nephews, and we all went to a holiday park, a caravan park, and I haven't been to one of those since I was a wee tot, a wee lad.
Like Butlins.
It was kind of like Butlins. It was oh crap, what was it called? Hemsby.
Pontins.
And so it had like a little clubhouse. So I went swimming and everything, did all the things that you do. We didn't rent out a pedalo, is that what they're called? So that little like electric scooter type things. Didn't do that. Didn't rent out any of those. But we did go to the clubhouse, and it was just a mental age. How Ricky describes the, David Copperfield's not the magician.
Not the magician.
and joint
Well, who was-
joint effort. So there wasn't joint effort, but there was a woman who came on, basically the entire Disney princess repertoire, and then she did a poor rendition of Whitney Houston's "How Will I Know," and she just couldn't.
Those two things don't seem to fit. Disney
No, it's really
and then a bit of Whitney Houston.
And then she kept trying to hit this note, and I felt so sorry for the poor girl. They work bloody hard though. Those redcoats they do. It's an amazing job, actually.
Mate, some entertainers play on Broadway in the West End. Some play at Hemsby. Do you know what I mean? There's going to be a difference between which notes you can hit, depending on which location you're in.
Oh, then get this, Gary. Guess what was the last song that they played at the disco? Take a guess.
Something like "Don't Look Back in Anger."
Correct.
Was it? Oh, that would have made. I wouldn't have cared about the rest of it.
So my nephew who wanted to dance, I don't think he did want to dance. I was like, come on, let's go dance to. And I don't know, how do you dance to "Don't Look Back in Anger"? So I was sort of doing my. I've got one dance move which is sort of. It's like Morrissey, but without. You know when you used to fly the flowers around, but without the flowers. So it's just.
That's such a specific definition of your
dancing.
That's
what it was. I can't
like Morrissey. You know Morrissey when he used to dance, which wasn't often, and when he used to flow
he
flowers
did
around,
dance,
but without the flowers.
You know when he flew the. Anyway,
I vaguely remember.
Anyway, other things that happened. Stop me from boring you.
Well, I will, but you stop.
Okay, so got one more thing. My cousin also asked, do you want to go see Ricky Gervais with me? He had live tickets. See Ricky Gervais. He's going next Thursday or Friday. Do email in if you are going and tell me what it's like, that gig. And he said, do you want to go? And I said, no.
No. Yeah, so how much, how he's changed. It's a proper, Ricky's like
think how expensive
hero.
They were. Think how expensive
I know you
those
describe
Ricky
as hero, but with some, it's because it shows how downhill he's gone in our estimations. But who are we to judge? But yeah, I wouldn't have particularly wanted to see him live, but it would have been funny. I would have laughed at laugh for me is a vague smile on my face, but I would have laughed at some of it. I'm sure it would have been fun. He's a funny guy, but I wouldn't be going seeing Harry Hill, Stuart Lee, if it's live.
Well, we can go and see Stuart Lee for my birthday in January.
Okay, great. I take that back, actually. I'd rather sort of go on my own, if that's all right.
All right.
If we went to 2 different shows.
Well, my mum's coming as well. You like her.
I know, we went... do you remember when we went... Me, Miles, and Miles' mum went to see Stuart Lee, and we had a few drinks, before. We had drinks before, drinks during, 2 rounds. And a load of drinks after. And then I couldn't get back to my hotel because all the buses had stopped, the trains had stopped. I got a taxi halfway across London back to my hotel.
How much did that set you back, Gary?
50 quid. Well, 50 quid or something.
This is a man.
But no, that was a fun night because we drunk so much. Yeah, and for me, there isn't anything interesting. I've just been plugging away at my work really, but I've been missing this. I've been missing doing a podcast. But both of us, for different reasons, have had to not do it each week. So
it's great to have you back on as a contributor, Gary, onto my podcast.
Yeah. He likes the power dynamics. I've noticed we need to get more used to not talking over each other again. We're sort of hitting that.
Just excited.
I'm excited too. But we're reviewing, and I'll just say, episode 48 today. Now, Mars did tell me that it was episode 50, so I listened to I listened to it, and I was like, no, it's not that. So I listened to episode 49. Oh, what a waste, because it was actually episode 48. He got it wrong. So.
But you enjoyed it anyway, didn't you?
I enjoy it all the time, except it does feel a bit like work listening to them now.
Charming.
I know.
Okay.
I like them. I love them.
I do. So he's right. This week we discuss episode 48, originally broadcast on the 26th of July 2003. The Chinese language, Anteaters and the Waxwork Museum, KP Looks After Me, If Karl Were PM or President, winner of Who is the Most Hated Amongst the Listeners, Monkey News, the chimp cyclist on a tricycle in the London-Brighton bike road. I'll put a link to the original show in the description. And when you're ready, you can join us for our little debrief. Oi!
We always do that. It's never funny, but
I've never laughed. Once.
Never funny.
Anyway, Gary, what are your first thoughts for this ep?
Well, it's a good episode. It's not amongst my favourites. I'll say that. Like the golden period that I talked about, which starts at about episode 39, goes to about episode probably last week or the week before. This is a good episode. It's solid. One thing that you mentioned there in the intro that I've never liked the feature Who Do You Hate? And it's not like based on a moral thing or like being offensive. I've just thought every time I listen to that and it goes across a few shows, there's never enough humor got out of it. It's never been a funny thing. It's never a funny part of the shows. It lasts for at least 2 or 3 shows. It starts a couple of shows ago, I think, and the results are today. And I've never found it funny. I don't know. What about you? Like, I think listeners would differ on that, but it's just not that. It could be so much funnier. Like,
I think for me,
speed past those bits usually.
There's one key takeaway bit from the XFM hate poll, and it's when Ricky says, and this is such a great analysis of why people love this show. So he says, XFM listeners aren't typical radio listeners, and our listeners aren't typical XFM listeners. And I think that's a brilliant microcosm of like why people like this show and how unique it was, and how unique it was even within the confines of XFM. You know, the fact that it was such an anomaly, but in amongst that entire schedule.
I agree. That's a point that is interesting and shows Ricky's like immense talent for grasping like a situation. Like he grasped very early on that Karl would be such a unique and interesting voice to pick at and sort of have on the show. He understands his audience. The XFM audience isn't like a typical radio audience, and their audience is not typical XFM. I like that as well. But again, it's not like something I listen to and get entertained by. It's just that's an interesting point, and it is a value, but it's just there aren't really that many standout moments to this show either. But the Who Do You Hate? I've never liked. I've never found that interesting. I think there's so much more comedy that could have come from that.
I suppose it's something that like develops, doesn't it, as a natural feature progression from the last show, because I can't remember what they're talking about. You know, they do have a particular habit of picking on specific celebrities, don't they? Like Fats Waller, Rick Waller.
That's funny. Yeah, they do that funny, but I think it starts on a really awkward note. That's why maybe I don't like it. Like it starts, Karl says something like, "You wouldn't get that on Radio 1," and for some reason, and it happens from time to time, that's the sort of thing Ricky would really laugh at. But no one laughs. It's just silence, and then Steve says, I suppose that would mean I'd have to kiss Chris Moyles. And again, there's a bit of silence, and it's very forced. Like there's no laughter when it comes out. I know it's just every time it's mentioned.
That's from the last week's episode, though, isn't it?
But that's last week. I'm saying that.
Oh right, yeah.
That's why, because it starts from that place. I think it never kind of leaves that place for me. One thing we have talked about is what phrases do you use from the show, and we've talked about times we use different phrases and kind of things. There's one phrase from this show that I use not as a joke way or something to be funny, even funny to myself, but when the discussion of Chinese comes up, I've used this as if it was my own. So I've complete plagiarism. I've explained Chinese as like, like, because the sort of the symbols, they're weird, and I'll be talking with someone about it. This has happened multiple times, and I'll be like, one of those symbols could represent, like, pretty much represents the entire sentences. Like, for example, a gentleman sits by a stream of fish. Like, I've said that. I've totally plagiarized that as my own. It's not to be funny, because it's not funny, but it's an interesting point. Like, Ricky's really good at coming up with kind of like examples of things like that. Like, and he's not saying that to be funny, and it's not, but it is a really interesting way of describing how Chinese works, very basically. And I've used that. I've taken that. So I don't know if anyone else has taken that.
Something that I took a bit from that bit. My friend Richard, I was trying to make him like the shows. And I thought the funniest way to get him interested in shows is to tell him the most offensive bit, just so, because I know he'll be so annoyed at that. And he says that Mandarin or orangutan, and
oh yeah, I wrote that down because, like, looking back now, obviously, like, Ricky, there was no racial element to that.
Of course not.
When
no.
you're discussing other races, and then you put in like Ricky's putting orangutan because they talk about monkeys and like it's nothing to do with race, but like that would be picked up on today and be like that's completely out of order because the association of monkey and the racist association with monkey, like he doesn't mean it, but it's just I was quite shocked. I hadn't remembered that he said that until I listened back.
Oh, it's so funny. But it is. Why are they so fascinated with the Chinese? Genuinely,
I know they're just. It's like it's an obsession. But it is interesting the language. Like thinking about Chinese language, you haven't seen it written. It's like how in God's name does this translate to someone? Obviously, to Chinese people, it's natural. But I think that is an interesting fascination with the language that you can legitimately have. It's an interesting part of the show, but. I don't think there's anything stand out apart from maybe Karl's bonus monkey news, which is one of the great kind of
that's one of the best monkey news.
That's one of my favourite things.
And also, it connects us to London to Brighton. It connects us.
Oh, the London to Brighton. But well, no, I mean that's funny. Actually, that's a good. I've rated this week's monkey news 8 out of 10.
Wow.
Sorry, 8.5 out of 10. It's good, 8.5. But the monkey news he does before that about where they adopted a kid and got area.
As they got older,
I love that.
It got area.
I think that's fantastic. I love hearing that.
Do you want to learn some Chinese, Gary? Whilst we were sort of on that,
this could come across. This could end our careers, basically. But are you sure you want?
We never had one.
By the way, this is anyone listening, like from the police or whatever. This is Miles doing this, not me.
Well, yeah, we don't sound so. Okay, so hello.
If the word chong comes up or ching, don't do it.
It's not, and also it's not Chinese. It's Mandarin for a start.
Well, that is Chinese.
All right, already. So hello is ni hao.
I really thought you were going to say something different. Hello, but with R's instead of L's.
Okay.
Hello. Ni hao. Okay, ni hao.
Okay. Thank you is shishi.
Shishi.
You're welcome is buyang shi. Buyang shi. Excuse. Okay, I don't understand. Wu bu down. Oh shit!
Okay,
I'm gonna
can't. This is like you trying to read out our Patreon subscribers.
Okay,
I think that.
Are there any Chinese who are listening right now?
Yeah, does anyone?
I tried one better than they did, but yeah.
No, I mean it'll get you by in Peking. That, but you go out, you hit a dialect, you're not gonna.
Yeah. So one of the you're right. It's a very slow start to this show because it does feel like they're sort of finding their feet because it is left to Ricky and Steve. Karl doesn't actually come in till about 6 minutes in, something like that. And they're doing the whole trying to be controversial by doing the sort of satire. And you go, oh, you know what my favourite country is? Africa. That's actually. And right. A little thing that comes up, they go, Peter Mandelson. He's gay, isn't it? All gay people are good, and the underprivileged people, you're for it. And it was funny because every time his name was mentioned, because he was mentioned in the one of those big elections, is it Hartley and Paul, one of those ones?
Hartley and Paul,
that's it. And he kept coming back, and that's every time I see him, I see his face or hear his voice. That's all I see.
Well, you can hear that bit of audio.
I can just hear that bit.
He's good. He's good because he's gay.
Good because he's gay, isn't it?
Think of all of the, and there is quite a lot on what we would now call transgender, but they don't. Again, stuff. You can file this show under under stuff you would not get away with nowadays. Now, no, I'm not pretty sure I can get it. It's still funny when it's funny, but it's like you just wouldn't get away with a lot of it these days. The way they talk about people transitioning gender and just that's about Peter Mandelson as well. But doesn't it date it hugely when they talk about, and it always does. It's kind of like it jolts me because it's like it feels like 2 generations ago whenever they mention Tony Blair as being the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
But Tony Blair, it feels like 2 generations since he's been the Prime Minister. It feels so long ago.
Oh God, it really does. Well, mass murderers and politicians. What's the difference? Eh?
Oh.
But it's funny when they take, we would like to be on some sort of satire show then, because I think Stephen Merchant's definitely in this time has presented Have I Got News for You? And they've probably done
a couple of times.
Yeah, and he was quite good on that.
That's not a satire show. I wouldn't call that. Yeah, it is a bit. Yeah,
it is.
Kind of. Yeah, you could call it a satire show. Yeah, it's not what I would. Yeah, satire it's different. It's kind of more basic. It's more bit making fun of the news rather than satirizing the news as such.
And something else that has changed since then as well. When they're talking about Madame Two Swords and Ricky says, "Oh, they might melt down Rick Waller to make me or whatever,"
well,
he's probably in there now.
Oh, he's sure he's in there now. But Steve Merchant's probably in there.
Yeah,
because he's so tall.
Imagine that.
But think of them thinking Steve Merchant would ever actually be in there when Ricky wasn't even in there. You know, think of how much has changed. But I totally agree with what they say about Madame Two Swords.
100%
no
with you there.
interest whatsoever. And yeah, I've been to that place on the Oxford Street, or not the Oxford Street, what's the big corner with everything. Their queue is always huge outside it, but no interest ever. I've never.
But that's the one that you're talking about. That's like the big freak museum, isn't it?
Oxford Circus. That's different.
Because Madame Two Swords is in Baker Street.
Oh, is it? That's an interesting one. I think it's called Believe It or Not or something like that. Ripley's. That I'd go to. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'd go to that.
Just to see waxworks of, and I do like the bit they talk about. Probably my favourite bit of the episode, apart from It Got Area, is where they're talking about Caprice. Is that Caprice? No,
don't get too close.
Don't get too close. No, it's not Caprice, but it's a
Caprice as well. Like she was all the rage back then, wasn't she? She was like the it girl or model, whatever she was. I'm with you there. I'm also, because I'm not a big photo taker as well. Like it wouldn't be good for me anyway, because I would just, half the point is you want to go back to your friends, don't you? Like they said, and go, that's me with Zuella. Or whoever the modern equivalent is now. I wouldn't even want to meet these people for real, either, to be honest. Yeah. Never meet your idols.
No, I would want to meet some of them for real, but the difference between meeting them for real and meeting a waxwork of them, and like having, it's embarrassing. It's almost like you'd never like believe that it's not like anyone's would be convinced. You can't convince someone you were with Barack Obama. Yeah, it was like Daily Mash saying, convince your friends you've been to Madame Tussauds by tracking down Barack Obama, Jay-Z and David Beckham and having your photo taken with them. And like doing it the other way around. Yeah. Actually to try and convince them you were at Madame Tussauds actually do.
Well, I'll tell you, on that note, if you do want to go to a waxwork museum, then there is one in Great Yarmouth where I did frequent on my holidays. And it's known as like the worst waxwork museum.
I think they featured that on Have I Got News for You.
They probably did. I remember they did. It's the most bizarre. I mean, Great Yarmouth is the most bizarre place in the world ever. Like beautiful yellow sands. But if you go on like the high street, the sort of on your way down to the pier, you have never seen so many people in mobility scooters. And like people with, Garrett, I'm not joking, no limbs. Like, and that's not
prejudice. Is this a prejudice?
No, not at all. Not at all. It was just very
added to the list.
Added to this Chinese people. It was just really weird to see loads of people without legs and loads of people in mobility scooters. Well, and then I was thinking I might open a mobility scooter shop and then loads of money.
Someone's probably beat you to that, I imagine.
Probably would have done. It's the niche, isn't it?
Well, it is known as a retirement area, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of people who are old there, and there's probably a lot
of wars going on there, though, Gary. It's not like the Blitz is down there. There's no reason for all these.
But same in Brighton, in Kent Town. You know, Kent Town's like that.
Yeah.
St James Street. Anyway, if you don't know Kent Town, it's St James Street. Sorry, I'm digressing, but yeah, there are places in the UK with lots of people who are either old or have drug problems and lose limbs. It's quite sad. Is this really a podcast discussion though? But I mean, it can be. Let's do another 10 minutes on this. See how it goes.
Well, we were on Carl's theme of what's good and bad. I think we covered it there. Lovely beaches. Loads of people in mobility scooters. That's what's good about Great Yarmouth.
You shouldn't feel that as a bad thing. That should just be like something. Maybe another good thing that you've got an avenue to help people.
One thing that does, and I'm actually with Karl on this, when he's talking about when you're in the jungle, and he's like, when people have urges to do things. I've got to be very careful how I say this. I'm actually with him, because if it was two fellas in a jungle and you don't know about women, you would still want to have sex with someone.
A melon.
Because
melon with a hole cut in it.
But you would have urges, and you would. That's what happens with men in prisons and stuff.
Yeah,
because you have urges, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's nonsensical concept because no one does grow up without women. Yeah, in prison, a degree of men, certain men who there's a great, I think it's Louis Theroux documentary on that concept in prisons, and there was this one guy who's had a boyfriend in prison, but he was an ex-neo-Nazi. No, in fact, he was still a neo-Nazi.
I've seen the same one.
He'd been in for killing someone, like for neo-Nazi killing, but he'd become gay. Yeah, that's kind of true, but not really. It's not kind of like a point that you should make, because it's such a rare. No one grows up without seeing women, you know.
But this happens with like feral children.
I certainly do. I had loads around me for obvious reasons, if you know me.
But it happens with feral children, doesn't it? Like, there's been so many examples of like children growing up with wolves or.
No, I don't think there has actually. There's been about 5 in history.
Yeah, well, that's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not a lot relatively, really, is it? Compared to children, and they don't. What do they? They don't have sex with the animals they grow up with when they get older.
I don't know yet. That's why we haven't found that out yet.
another slagging off another group. One thing I don't like about this episode again, it just gets me, is where Ricky's talking about determinism. The bit where he says, "By the way, Karl, do not confuse this with fatalism," right? And as if it's like obvious. And Steve laughs. Like, now, I bet Steve doesn't know the difference anyway. But Steve's like laughing along, like, oh, of course, it's an obvious distinction between the two. Like, you know, I just don't like that. Do not.
I find that bit funny,
they can say do something like that with like, do not confuse Chinese with wolves or monkeys, like that. But to say do not confuse determinism with fatalism, as if it's an obvious thing.
Yeah,
like in that.
Because it's not.
It's like, no, it's not obvious. No, I've looked into it at times, and I do understand, I think, what both are, but I still wouldn't off the bat like be able to like say, oh yeah, that's the difference in them, even vaguely know through my studies. But
so many people do this a few times, don't they, when things that are named after what they eat, and Ricky says flycatcher, and he says, what's that? Bird in it?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't know, so don't say that you know if you don't know.
I don't think there is a bird called flycatcher. There's flycatchers.
There isn't. I've looked.
Plants. There's plant. Yeah, the plants.
Yeah, there is. It's a plant.
There aren't many things named after what it eats, and it is a funny point by Karl to say how good is something if it's named after what it eats. That's a really good Karl line. Like, that's a good part of the episode. Like, it's funny, and Ricky laughs at it, and it's a funny part. But again, they're kind of a bit few and far between in this show. Still got quite a few good quotes. For quotes.
One of the quotes is, "Tell me why, tell me why, tell me why don't they play the game of swing ball?"
Oh. Yeah, that's a good one. I've given as we're on it, I've given this week's songs of phrase 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10 counts.
And it generates humour from this stuff.
It is fantastic. I love it. This is my favourite songs of phrase. And how Ricky goes, this is so naughty. This is so naughty. We shouldn't be doing this. Fellow with 2 dicks. I said spunk, which was a bit cutting edge, which was a bit controversial.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say, like, that is in my favourite quote. So spunk, which is where he said, press the knob, bunk. Like, yeah, that's really clever to kind of make it like, oh, it's going to be sort of a bit naughty, but then just literally say a random non sequitur word, you know, that is naughty.
My favourite bit, though, I have to say, of this whole episode is the bit about KP looks after me, and what would you do if you're Prime Minister, President? It's just how quickly Karl gets stressed out. I got him in my favourite quotes, but I can't be bothered running the country, Steve. You know, Saturday should have been my day off.
Yeah, no, that is funny, but again, it doesn't last so long. I like it when he says he'd probably ask Suzanne.
But the ignorance of it, like, Tony Blair doesn't ever say everything, does he? Does he?
No, that's true. It's a good point, actually. He does. Karl did. That's an understanding of the workings of the state. Like, the leader, even as a president, doesn't do everything. You know,
it's crazy. Like, how can one person? He can't do everything. Can he? I just love it. And he's like, what do you think capital punishment? What do you think of guns violence? What do you think of... I was like, you just see the panic on his face.
But it actually is difficult to sort out those things. So, like, it's like,
how would you would you sort it out, Gary?
How would I sort out what?
Let's say the criminal system.
The criminal system. Probably he means the criminal justice system.
That's what I meant.
Gentlemen. He doesn't use the right language. I don't know. I'd probably ask my girlfriend who doesn't exist. So I'd ask.
Well, you've got no excuses.
I'd probably ask you. I'd probably say, Mars, how do I solve this? No, I'd give. I'd generally make sentences less long. Less hard, less onerous, keep more people out of prison, get people back into work, expunge criminal convictions at an earlier date, and have a better, more functioning society. How's that?
It's great to be back on this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Ways to change the world with Gary Forrester. I think that's all from me on this episode. Do you have anything else you want to add?
There is a little bit that I kind of like, but it's not like a funny bit. It's very rare you hear this. It's genuine anger from Steve at something Ricky said. Like he said, let me give him the email address. I just said it. Quite like that's just an interesting bit. You never hear stuff like that. Like, you do hear them argue, but never like that's a real like. Let me give it. I just said it, so let me give it. It reminds me of our broadcast.
Yeah,
we had
definitely
genuine moments like that. But no, I think we should. I need a wee as well, so we should maybe take a break. Come back. We're going to come back with our favourite quotes. XFM the community, which is quite big because you've been in contact with us since we've been away, and apparently choose our favourite song.
And if you need the bathroom, now's the time to go.
And welcome back to the show. You had a nice little break like we did. And we're going to do our favourite quotes now. This is a normal part of the show. So actually, someone said this week they like favourite quotes, didn't they? That's
did they?
I think someone said they like our favourite quotes. Or did they not? Did I imagine it?
People like different parts of the show.
No, someone did. I read something on my sort of quarterly review of the emails every 3 months. I go into the emails. Anyway, favourite quotes. So I'll start off this week. And maybe some Neil Younge. I do like that.
He's the king of the single entendre, but we can double it up if you want.
On that point, he's approaching from behind. so basic.
Just so bad. Oh, do you know what though? And they use the same joke. Do you know who died? Well, 2 people died in the absence. Tom O'Connor.
Yeah.
And he took the literary world by surprise. Then Ricky says, from behind. He was trying that amusing. And also, John O'Coleman. He's passed away. Yeah.
Oh, God. It does show. And also, it's like, I don't know, it's not fact check, but, because he was still young, but it must have been. He
was in his 60s, very young.
Yeah, I don't know if he'd lost weight, but that does take its toll. It's sad, very sad. That's sad. Oh, I put a downer on it.
Sorry, what's your next one?
What's your next? It's a good way to get out of that. My next one was spunk. Just a bit of pause, and I put ... spunk.
My next one's also a single word, buxom, which is a very unusual word. A very unusual word to buxom. It's very medieval, isn't it?
It's a real Steve word. Do you know who I like? Foreigners. I quite like that.
Euro Disney, that's good. I like that line from Steve. And I was just sitting there reading about the mouse that had Near on its back.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Like the things what they do in the fact like the different Suzanne's in the front room watching the news.
Yeah,
he's just reading it 14 times.
You should pay attention to this. Like I can totally imagine that. It'll get you by in Peking. I touched on it earlier. I do like that. It'll get you by in Peking. You hit a dialect, you're going to struggle.
Just a reminder of how funny Ricky can be. I can't be bothered running the country. Saturday should have been my day off. What I love about Karl there is his commitment to all of Ricky's ridiculous questions and scenarios.
Yeah.
Most people would just go, shut the fuck up, or just go,
he never writes them off entirely.
He never writes them off. He goes for it, and that's commendable.
Well, this is another example of him kind of being asked ridiculous stuff and coming up with a great comment. Well, look, if we need it, how much more have you got on the Chinese? That's one of my favorite. That's probably my favorite.
He'll just come out with these zingers like Tarzan. My next one.
Okay. Sorry, I was just reading this, trying to work out what bit it came from, but I realised that. Yeah, don't get too close. She does. Yeah. She does look. Don't get too close. She does, yeah. I forgot what bit that came from, and then I remembered.
I think this is my favourite quote from the whole show. There's a Japanese bird outside. Don't fancy her. I'm not interested. I'll never change my view.
And I never change. Oh, they are very good. Yeah, they do go into that like Beatles thing, unplanned, very quickly. It's quite impressive. It's not like a laugh out loud funny bit, but it's like. I like the way that Ricky and Steve can enter kind of a dialogue like that. Riffing on it. The fella in Karate Kid, the teacher's only about 36.
I've never watched The Karate Kid.
Never.
No.
He loves film. I'm surprised I've watched it even.
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Did you say that again? Did you say that before?
And it's another on the same sort of way. Let's leave that, eh? Just as very simple. Let's leave that, eh? Let's just leave that, yeah. He is often the one who's like he could be the worst, Carl, in terms of being offensive, but he does kind of know. He will step in quite often and say, let's move on in some different form or fashion.
This is my last one, and it's didn't write this one, but he sings it bloody well. David Bowie, sorry.
He sings it bloody well, yeah.
It just reminds me of any of the use of the word bloody, just could jump straight back to bloody good meal. Or
yeah, because he's playing the role of like a bit of a posh person. So bloody good. I've got two more. So someone just puts you there.
Someone just
puts you. And my last one is this tricycle.
Yeah. That is a classic. What's your favourite quote to do spinnerspodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter? That's Spinners Podcast. And that's what loads of you did in the interim whilst we've been away, as we move quite gracefully into our next regular feature, which is Gary.
Oh, sorry. You did that really smoothly as well. I was waiting for you to finish it, but I've ruined it now by not being there on the end of that.
I've had a lot of time to practice. Sorry.
XFM in the community.
Yeah, thanks everyone for getting in touch. I certainly read them all. This might be the first time Gary's heard or read them.
No, sometimes some of them are. I haven't heard them.
It's true. This one just in from Sam Thompson. Dear Miles and Gary, apologies for the long email, but I just wanted to say how great it's been listening to your podcast and finding some new RSK content to fill my time with. Having listened to all of the XFM shows countless times over the years, I've been a fan of the shows for about 15 years. You read out an email in one episode from a DTRT who mentioned torrenting the shows and how this gave you a sense of nostalgia. It also did for me, having done the same, but the only torrents I was able to find was the original radio recordings in their entirety. To be able to listen to the shows without interruptions, I downloaded a free music editing software and spent, some might say wasted, God knows how many hours of my late teens manually editing out each song so that only the spoken elements were left and saving the audio files to listen to on my iPod.
That's done. Someone had done that years ago already.
But maybe they didn't then. I think the aspiring music radio producer in me felt like this was a stepping stone into the music industry that I could put on my CV. But unsurprisingly, that career never materialised.
Oh.
You got to try, haven't you? You got to try. I've tried getting people into the shows over the years without much success, but have had the occasional joy of meeting someone new and accidentally bonding over a shared love of the show. I do have one good mate who I can text random obscure lines from the show with no context, knowing that he'll know the exact conversation between Ricky, Steve, and Karl, and where it comes from.
Well, we had that. The only reason you and I don't do that now is because we're doing the shows so much. So we it's like work, but
it's like this
that for years, just completely out of context. I'd love sending you something completely out of context, and
the shorter the better, because your brain has to work that bit harder.
But not a punchline. Never send a punchline. You always send a build up to a punchline or something that
exactly. That's what you want. Or even just a bit of grammar, just a bit of dodgy grammar.
Yeah.
He wraps up, Sam, saying, I still listen to the shows whenever I need to relax or switch off from the world. They are almost like a nostalgia trip to a pre-social media time where the world felt a bit simpler. Or some of the more borderline offensive content does feel dated and rightly wouldn't be broadcast now. Part of what makes the shows great, and as a form of escapism, is how little they seem to be manufactured and filtered compared to what you'd get away with on radio now, even on more alternative shows. Now, I'll put a link in the description of this, but something I posted on our Twitter was an article from Tom Ford, who was this journalist who we're talking to. We're going to hopefully try and get him on the show. But around the time it was the 20th anniversary of The Office, which is, we missed that.
That was last week.
Yeah, and he basically wrote an article about the XFM days, but he headed it like the headline was all about, offensive and would this get away with it now? Every time we talk about the XFM shows, it always seems to be like, can we not just enjoy them for what they are? Brilliant article, by the way, so I'm not slagging off the article or Chris Campling. What I'm saying is,
I'm a character.
Yeah,
Gary doesn't exist.
But why do we have to always view things in the prism? And I think Sam's right there. It's just that nostalgia. You should just be able to enjoy them for that.
But no. I think Sam's almost saying the opposite. He is acknowledging that you wouldn't get away with stuff now. He's not saying we shouldn't talk about that. Or we shouldn't acknowledge that. He's just saying I can still appreciate them as nostalgia, and that's pretty much what our view. And it is independently our view. Each of us, we've discussed this week even. It's relevant this week, Sam's in, because we've discussed bits that you wouldn't get away with today, and it's okay to acknowledge them and even say maybe you find them offensive, but kind of not so offensive that you can't still find the humor in them. They did nothing awful or evil, but you should still acknowledge where this is a very different world we're in today. But I do like the actual, because one thing we are in as a world, and for good reason in some ways, is a filtered world. Like a lot of things are filtered. A lot of things are like, you would get stuff if this was put out as a podcast, their show, even as a radio show, you'd have several producers. You'd probably have a producer of ethics or something. You'd have like someone checking over everything for it being offensive. Certainly if it's a podcast that was run by a company or something, you would have it's filtered. The word we get is kind of like it's all sparkly and it looks nice because it's been filtered, but it's actually, there's something nice and better in some ways about the rawness of these shows, that they are, if anything, completely unfiltered. They are filtered through nothing. They're not like Evian. There is no filtering going on. They're kind of, they are pure. And I do like that. I think that's what Sam's saying. And Sam, also, thanks for your email in general. I'm glad you liking the shows.
Absolutely. This one's from Harry Steen. Dear Miles and Gary, first and foremost, your show is great. Honestly worth it just to hear you two share your favourite quotes. Looking forward to the Anne Frank and Old Mother Hubbard discussions in Series 3.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait.
That would be great. Recently, thanks to lockdown, working from home and a lack of job satisfaction, I changed career from the glitz and glamour of financial services to become a firefighter.
Oh, wow.
Hello, is there a fire?
Hello, is there a fire?
Hello. Is there a fire?
Hello.
Hello.
Have you experienced that at all? Let us know.
That's how we, as you might expect, the last few weeks on the job have been incredibly stressful as I learn the ropes, respond to calls, and generally become more proficient in the required areas. Having people such as yourself to discuss in depth the off-the-cuff remarks of the old radio show, which has been a part of my life for at least 10 years now, has made the transition to a new career immeasurably smoother and more relaxing. Whenever I feel anxious or worried, I'll either turn onto the shows themselves. Carl's story about the couple who were sold a chimp is always a barnstormer, which is what we discussed now.
Yeah,
or your reviews of said shows, and it always brings me comfort. Thank you, Harry. That's really nice to know that we're sort of helping you as you undergo your what must be incredibly intense training. Like that must.
No, I just let me say that is an incredibly brave move to do. I was in financial services, so I made a move, but just not something as radically different as that. And that's brave apart from anything else. And being a firefighter is brave in general, but just to make that leap, and I'm glad you did it and found something from lockdown that you can kind of be and feel, I guess you'll feel more job satisfaction, prouder of what you do, quite rightly as well. So good luck with that. I think it's very brave, and it's lovely of you to say that about the shows, and I'm glad they give you some comfort, as the XFM shows do. Probably the XFM shows are higher in your list of things that give you comfort, but it's nice to be in that list, so thank you.
I mean, I always feel better about my life when I talk to you, Gary, so that's something.
That's the theory, isn't it? That's why people like our show, because they feel better about their lives knowing how shit ours are.
Harry goes on. It's not over yet, mate. It's not over yet. A question for you both. If Ricky, Steve and Karl had not met each other, what do you think they'd be doing now? Would Karl have stayed at XFM as a producer until retirement, retirement? Or would someone else have eventually picked up on his incredible comic wit? Would Ricky have been given his big break and ended up as nothing more than the pub quiz answer in which British duo had unexpected hit in the Philippines with a single more to lose? And would Steve have got into doing more serious writing and directing sooner? Or would he have been given another chance on a different station and ended up being another Sturgis or Canfield? Anyway, thank you. Thank you for taking time to do your show and bring your unbridled joy to other XFM obsessives who could happily have full conversations only using the quotes from the show. Give me a shout next time you're in Edinburgh and we'll go for a pint. And he also says, P.S. If any other listeners in Fife or the Edinburgh area, then let me know and we can arrange a pub quiz. I wish it hadn't cost me a tenner for us all to meet up at.
Yeah, definitely. To do it's a very interesting thought experiment. I've often thought, all three of their careers completely changed, had the course in history and changed the history of the course of comedy by Steve happened to being the first CV that Ricky picked up. They told that story. I totally believe it. Because you can imagine Ricky just, this would do. If it had been someone else's, I think Ricky would have had a career in comedy doing stand-up, and he probably would have made something like The Office is now, just nowhere near as good, but not like the amazing piece of art that it is now, but just like a sketch or something. And he would be a much lower level stand-up comedian, because obviously Ricky still shows talent in his writings today, but what gets you the ability to have a Netflix special is your pedigree, is what you've achieved before. Ricky could have the same amount of talent, but he would never have got a Netflix special unless he had been Ricky Gervais. So he's still as talented as writer, and that's a show we don't particularly like too much, but it probably has its moments. But I think Ricky's definitely would have had a career in comedy and not radio, probably. Whereas Steve, I think, would have had a career in radio somehow, but they wouldn't. It's so much changed for Karl, Ricky, and Steve. Just the fact it happened to be Steve's CV that he picked up first. Everything would be different. The world would have lost Trout spinners for one thing. The world wouldn't be subjected to this awful shite. It's interesting. I don't think like Ricky would just gone on to nothing. Ricky would have gone on to something. Steve would have gone on to something both much higher levels. And with regards to Karl, I think he would still be XFM, being a producer. No one would have picked up on his talent in the way Ricky does. He probably would have got into a pattern of speaking a little bit on shows, but nothing like he did there. And he would not have become the legendary figure he is today. But he probably still would have been at XFM making a decent living, head of production still, or an even grander title. I don't know, but I
definitely think he would be doing something major. And even when he left, because he did some stuff with Russell Brand and he produced, and Russell and him seem to get on. I'll put a link to those shows as well, because that you can get something good out of those. Definitely, I agree with on your note. Had Ricky and Steve, really, what would have happened? Because Steve recently spoke on the Office Ladies podcast, which is really good. And they talk about, how he met and how, they went to the pub, and everyone knows this story, I'm sure. But he says, if you do, I don't know how I've got this job. Ricky says to Steve, if you do all of the work, I'll let you get away with murder and have an easy life. But it just goes to show, and they asked, Steve, what was it about, each other's qualities that attracted you to each other? Because it is a fascinating, dynamic, that of the comedy duo. He says, I think it kind of actually reminded me of me and you. In no way am I comparing us at all together, but they're saying, Ricky was very much like that big brother figure who was supportive and who was very funny and, had loads of life experience. Nothing really put him off. He was always a bit of a go-getter. But what you had with Steve was that the thing that you can't bottle, that you only get when you're in your 20s, which is that, that fire, that desire to do something, to make a difference, to push on with something. Whereas, it's kind of hard to do that as you get more involved in your career. It's hard to, so you make loads of your big decisions then. And also he was doing things with the BBC. He would definitely still be in TV production. I think you're absolutely right, Harry. 100% he would be writing and directing now.
He wouldn't be as big, because like telling you, it's we've interviewed people. I can't remember who. Like they're struggling. Even Karl, like sometimes has to go and pitch ideas and kind of almost get an interview for them. But so much of everything else that came, they would still have had the exact amount of writing talent and maybe have written some series and things individually that were as good that have been on TV now. But it's all about opportunity, and because they did The Office, they got so many opportunities. Quite rightly, it's the right thing. It's testament to how brilliant The Office is. But it is quite sad that a lot of people who are extremely good stuff don't get the opportunity to have it made. Because they haven't done something big and huge. They just don't get it read by a producer. But as soon as they've done The Office, everything they wrote from then on would have been taken extremely seriously.
The Trout spinners for one.
Yeah, we've done some writing and hasn't gone anywhere. Not yet.
No, just a couple more XFM to wrap us up. This is from Michael Hollingsworth. I just found your podcast today via the Dickie Anderson episode. Listen to all you have now. I'm another mental person that listens to all the XFM shows, even season 0, then the podcasts, offlines, and audiobooks, roughly in chronological order each year for the past 15 years. Most years I listen to all of them 2 to 3 times. So mad, isn't it?
Mental.
This one,
Michael, thanks for your email. Yeah, it's great to. I mean, that's probably the most obsessive fan we've of the XFM shows that I've ever come across. Yeah, that's thanks for letting us know your routine, and I might try that. I don't go to Series 0 as much, and I don't know what you're referring to when you refer to the offline bits, but they
mean that unbroadcast, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but how'd you get them? Let us know how you get the unbroadcast bits, because I'd like to listen to them. But yeah, you're mental. Lock yourself up in a facility.
John Tideman says, I've been listening from the very beginning, and I have to say, absolutely fantastic. You two are great together. And I found myself really chuckling irrespective of the RSK content. So that's very nice to hear.
Thank you.
Also, I live in Brighton, coincidentally. Gary, if you'd like to meet up for a pint one day, that'd be cool.
Yeah. John Tybin. Yeah, John, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm a bit busy until
can I come?
The next Olympics in 2026. Can I come? Mars, well, you can, but I'd rather go with just on my own. I don't know why. Yeah, because I want to be like, I don't know. I don't want you to ruin it in any way. Maybe Mars will be there too. But yeah, we'll arrange something, John. If you're in Brighton, it's a shame to throw away that opportunity.
The weather's beautiful now, so you can go to the Hobgoblin. They've got a good pub, or my favourite, which is the Hop Poles. So if they could sponsor us, that'd be amazing. Them or Aspel cider, bloody love that. And our last one, this is from James Bromfield. So James, if you remember, he arranged the pub quiz, which unfortunately I couldn't attend because completely forgot, completely double booked. I was actually going back to Suffolk, but it all went well, and he had this to say. So the XFM pub quiz went brilliantly. I asked everyone how they heard of the quiz, and a whole bunch of spinners said they heard it through the podcast. So massive thanks for that. Very pleased to hear that.
Really pleased to hear that.
Was a great vibe. All teams were friends by the end, and we spoke about how much the XFM shows mean to us. And I felt a bit emotional at the end, if truth be told. To be fair, I was 8 Guinnesses in, though. Some great prizes were won, including Executive Decision and Ladder 49.
That's brilliant. A brilliant idea to do that.
I love it. Some great quizzing too. I've attached the winning answer sheet, so try and have a guess as to what the questions might have been. I'll make sure that I share that on Twitter alongside the photos, because James has also shared us the group together.
Yeah. Exactly.
The one that had everyone stumped was name the 4 bands/artists that were played more than once in Song for the Lovers. There's also a picture of some of the participants. One of them tweeted about it and got a like by none other than Ricky Gervais himself. I'm definitely going to do a Series 2 quiz in the autumn, so I'll let you know about that. But yeah, thanks again, and play a record.
Wow, excellent. No, it's a great idea, Jack. James, sorry. It's nice you got emotional. It's a nice emotion, I guess. And sorry we couldn't be there. We both couldn't make it, but it was lovely that people got together at the quiz because they'd heard it on this show. So I'm so pleased we could put them together for you. And excellent job. I can only fully commend you for doing that and putting that on. Fantastic effort. If there's a Series 2 one and we're available, Mars and I will be there.
Absolutely. We're not very good at organisation, Gary.
No, we're not.
You try and organise a drink in Brighton and a reservation in a restaurant. It's not a quick process.
No, it's not. But we'll try.
We do try. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for all of your extra feminine communities. Do get in touch if you've got something to say, a bit of an insult or whatever. Spinnerspodcast at gmail.com or Spinnerspodcast and Twitter.
Or all
Gary,
the Reddit threads.
All the Reddit threads that love us so much.
I've got a song.
I've
been listening to this quite a bit, actually. It's a classic. It's one of my favourite songs, but it's from an artist that's kind of like laughed at and joked at. Like, he had a song that was at number 1 for 14 weeks, and it was like really annoying. He kind of does annoying love songs, but this is just brilliant. And you'll know it, right? It's basically Summer of 69 by Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams?
Summer of 69. Fantastic. Classic.
Oh, man. Right, let me just tell you this. Every time I was at school, there were this group that we'd always use. We called them the Fun Spongers, and they all loved Bryan Adams. So I've just got toxic memories of Bryan Adams.
Okay, I'm not a Bryan Adams fan. I'm not a fun sponger. But the fun sponger. That sounds like one of Ricky's characters in his Fun Spongula. No, I just like that song. That I've only got one Bryan Adams song on my iPod, and it's that one.
Yeah, and I do know the song, actually.
I got my first real 6-string, boy, the vibe and down, played it till my fingers bled.
We've got to pay royalties on that now.
And then he goes, standing on your mama's porch, you told me it would last forever, and when I held your hand...
We just listened to a man singing now.
There you go.
And these were the best days of my life, can I say, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah, there you go. No.
And you know, no, it's not right. It's respectable. You're allowed to have that. My song is, I've been listening, do you know, I just can't stop listening to him. Whenever I'm working, he comes on all the time. And there's just something about his voice that just grabs me. And it's George Michael. I'm pretty sure I've put a George Michael song in before, but this is what I mean. He's on my Spotify so much. And it's going to be...
voice, yeah.
I also quite like it because I feel like I can sing his songs in karaoke. I think it's the right... It's the right... What's it got? The right note?
You can't sing it well, but yeah, it's right pitch and tone.
So it's going to be...
Nothing yet by Andrew Ridgeley, though, in our favourite songs.
Not interested. So I'm going to put an Amazing by George Michael. This is the Trout Spinners library. I'll put...
amazing.
He does this bit at the end where he goes... Celebrate.
God, I'd love to hear your
when he's you know. So every time I go home to see my sister, because we both like to do a bit of karaoke. So yeah, that always happens. Anyway, that was the return of the Trout Spinners. We do hope to see you in future episodes, and we're gonna try and be a bit more regular and a bit more organised with our recording schedules.
We can't promise, so never promise, but we'll do our best. And for the beginning of series 3, we've got a special thing coming up. I don't know if I can, well, we've said before, so we might do a show live on Twitch, so you can watch us do a show, and we'll obviously interact with you if there is anyone there watching. But we might do that. So that was possibly for the first episode of series 3. So watch this space for us. There's a special episode coming up.
Definitely. So thank you everyone for listening and for your company, and we hope to hear from all of you.
Thanks. Great ending. Great beginning, great middle, and great ending now. No, thanks guys. We'll be back next week.